Yeah, can we get the house lights on, Daniel?
Maybe not.
Here. The show has started. The question was why 125.6? Was that the question? Why? We didn't get to choose that. You'd like to think we orchestrated it so we could have a nice, interesting ending to the film, but we didn't. That's the next step to figure out why it is that. We don't know. To tell the truth, in terms of the film, once we saw what the ending was, we had to backtrack and restructure the movie. Almost everybody in my field felt very confident that Higgs would be there. And this is, in some sense, the first new number in many, many years. It tells us something about the deeper theory. So as soon as that number came out, many of us jumped on it and tried to interpret what it means, what theory can accommodate that number, what theories don't look so good, and we get to live with it. The best part about it is to be a little bit surprised, and because then there's a lot more to think about and a lot to do. Why nature chose to sort of organize things that this is the way it would turn out, I can't. It's not my job. That's above my pay grade.
Yeah, we got a question up here.
Hey, David.
Hey.
So 125.6, is that what the number? Now, when does the LHC start again? And will going to higher energy, do we know that is the Higgs, that's it? It's not going to change? We know for sure that's what it is. So if that's it, what will we learn with future? Do you need do you have theories out there that do take, that would make sense with that mass? Are there theories that do make sense, and are things you expect to find if those theories are correct, or where does it go from here? And I'll end by saying, what a great way to make a cliffhanger so you have a sequel. That was perfect for this set up a sequel, so great job.
Thanks, Dan. Let's see, where do we start? When we turn on the machine again, it's turning on February of next year, and it'll be almost twice the energy. The question is, could the mass of the Higgs change? And the answer is no. Imagine taking say a metal bar and hitting it with a hammer. And when you hit it, there'll be some dominant sound that comes out, some tone. So by hitting it hard enough so you can hear it, you measure that tone as accurately as you can. The measurement of the Higgs is now within plus or minus 1 GeV, which means it can't change more than about 1 unless we've really screwed something up. The higher energy LHC is hitting that bar much harder, so not only you hear that tone, but maybe you hear all the overtones, and you learn a little bit more detailed properties of the thing you're hitting. So at this point, that's it. It's in the books. The Higgs exists. It's that mass, roughly, and we live with it. This was a situation where you could do a short calculation in 2006 and discover that somebody needs to make a documentary film, which is that you can predict the fact that a revolution was going to come. When the LHC turns on next year, there's not that sort of rigid prediction that something is going to happen and it's going to tell us something specific. We will learn something, even if we don't see new particles. We will certainly learn more about the Higgs, and we will, if we see no new particles, we'll rule out some possibilities. The most obvious candidate for a new particle we should discover is dark matter. There happens to be something that dominates the universe, some sort of matter. We know it's not made of atoms, and we know is there and is responsible for the creation of galaxies and the structure of the universe, and we have no idea what it is. So that's our job now, to figure out what that is. The simplest explanation, it's a new class of particle. Will it be there at the LHC? We have no idea. There are biases based on theories that many of us have written down, but we don't know. And the LHC is not the only game in town. There are many, many experiments out there searching for many different things. This was a nice moment where you could capture it in a story, where this monolith of an experiment turned on at a much higher energy than we've been at ever, and we knew that something would transform when we did it. Where the next big discovery is, I have no idea. I will say, just in case it's really true, in case you read the science pages, on Monday there's an announcement from an experiment based in Harvard, I think the Center for Astrophysics, about the measurement of the imprint of gravitational waves on the background, microwave background. And what that means, it's a more direct measurement of the possibility of a very early cosmic inflation near the very beginning of the universe, and to an energy scale that we have no access to in colliders like the LHC. So there's something on their webpage that says there'll be a press announcement of a major discovery. So if you follow the Science Times or anything like that, watch out for that. But we have no idea where the next big discovery is, although it may be Monday. So, yeah.
Question?
I'm not going to answer about the sequel, too.
What are you working on?
Hold on just one second, sir. You can go first. You got the microphone.
All right, well, my question is real simple. It's just, in a lot of these documentaries about the Higgs, they always say, we're looking for the next big, thing, like the next properties of the Higgs. And I just want to know what those properties are that you're looking for, because it always seems to just be, oh, we got the mass, and now we're looking for other properties. So,
Right. So the question, what are the other properties that we could actually measure? So what is the mass? The next one is the fact that the Higgs actually lives a very tiny fraction of a second means it decays into other particles. And the way you actually see the Higgs is you see the things it decays into, and then you track back and measure the energy, and via E equals mc squared, you measure the mass of the Higgs. So the rate at which it decays into the different types of particles, it decays into photons, which are particles of light. It decays to different types of quarks. And all the different possible ways it can decay in different ratios represent numbers in the theory. And all of those numbers are predicted by the standard model. If any of those numbers deviate from the standard model, we know that there must be some sort of quantum effect from something else in the theory that's not written down yet. So that would be an almost immediate indication that there's something in the theory that's missing. And so those are various things that can be measured. Also the rate at which it's produced, if you can measure that precisely, that's another number in the theory. The different ways it's produced and what it's produced with. So there are many things that seem somewhat uninteresting, but all sort of track back to fundamental properties of the theory itself. And then the other question was, what am I working on now? Finishing the PR blitz for a movie I made recently. And, but I'm also, what's great is after doing this, I get to be a graduate student again, so I'm learning many different things right now. I am working on theories of dark matter and ideas of how ways people could discover dark matter that hadn't been thought of yet. But there are other topics that I find interesting that I'm educating myself on. One is black hole entropy. Right now it's a hot topic, and I want to hear what the hubbub is all about. So I'm teaching myself that, essentially.
Right here.
Okay, so I guess I have a two-part question. So my first question is, when you are embarking on the next step of a project where the lines are a little bit blurred in what you think you might expect as the outcome, how do you believe in the convictions of your own ideas, and how does that propel you forward in a project?
Yeah, that's a great question. In physics, you have to be willing to live in uncertainty for very long periods of time. And I remember as a graduate student, I could do extremely well in classes, but once you start in on research, it becomes very scary because you can work for many, many months on something and then discover that the question itself was dumb. And everything you were doing was completely irrelevant. And that happened a lot in graduate school. So you sort of build up calluses for that. You toughen up and allow yourself to push forward. And a lot of times those dead-end projects are very good because they educate yourself. You start to know a little bit more about, in some sense, the theory universe, the universe of possibilities. And so you have to trust that you're training yourself all the time. You look at the entirety of the field that you're in, you look at what you think is interesting, and you allow things to be uncertain. You assume you don't understand everything, that nobody understands all aspects of it. And then you choose a direction. And then you convince yourself that that's got to be it. And you push it, and you give talks, this has got to be it. And then people tell you, no, that's a bunch of crap, that's not it. And they say, no, it is. And you do that because what your colleagues are doing are helping you pare down the things that are wrong, and what comes out will be the more robust ideas. So you develop a thick skin. You understand that all those arguments are not personal, and you enjoy the process. And for me, I've loved solving puzzles since I was a little kid. And these are the greatest puzzles of all time, in a literal sense. So you do it. I also discovered that I'm not good at many other things, so I couldn't get a job doing anything else. So eventually, it was a survival thing. So that actually helps when you know it's whether you're going to eat or not. So.
All right, we got one over here. Would you elaborate just a bit on the intersection between particle physics and astrophysics, which is something I just am curious about?
Sure. So, yeah, you often hear people talk about particles, but then they say that that's the birth of the universe, or something like that. The relationship is actually quite simple. It's the fact that we know the universe has been expanding for a long time. There's a significant amount of evidence for that. And so you can play the clock backwards and get to a point where the universe is so hot and dense, it's essentially a plasma within which particles are being created and destroyed all the time. And temperature, quantitatively, temperature is a measure of the average energy of any particle within that system. So your stove is hot, you touch the stove, you burn yourself because the molecules in your stove are jiggling fast enough to damage the molecules in your hand. And if you go back to a very high temperature universe, all the different bits of the universe, the particles are crashing into each other at incredibly high energy. So we know that means that there was a time in which the temperature was so hot, we don't know what was happening, because we've never seen the particles created at those energies. And so by crashing things together at high enough energy, you start to produce states of matter and effects that you wouldn't have seen otherwise, but were occurring in fractions of a second along the way in the universe. And even though those fractions of a second are very short, the rate of change of the universe is so fast that all of that stuff is very important for how the universe evolves. So it's a sort of a direct consequence. If you know what the constituents of the universe were near the beginning, then you can make time go forward and make a guess about what the universe should look like and what are its properties. And then you can match that onto observations cosmologically.
All right, do we have any more? Okay, yeah, right up front here.
So the discovery of the existence of the Higgs is certainly the most interesting result, but what have some other interesting results been from the data?
From the LHC?
Yeah.
Well, some of it is simply that we haven't discovered anything else. So there were some people hoping that we would see something immediately as the LHC turned on, even before the Higgs. So there were certain classes of supersymmetric theories, for example, that disappeared. In terms of direct discovery, clear cut, there hasn't been anything like the Higgs. There's been nothing that significant. Both the discovery of the Higgs and the measurement of its mass have both been very significant. The LHC has been in shutdown for a year, and it'll be in shutdown for another year. So in terms of data from the LHC itself, nothing, because there is no data from the LHC. They are analyzing all that data, but they haven't discovered anything significant.
All right, we got one in the middle over here.
Hi, thank you. You talked about a fork in the road. I'm not a scientist, but you were talking about this being a time of a fork in the road, implying an either or. What if it's both and? I mean, could the Higgs be destroyer and stabilizer?
Yeah, Yogi Berra once said, if you see a fork in the road, take it. And that's essentially what happened. The fork in the road, in this case, was represented by the possibility of seeing additional particles besides the Higgs that could explain the existence of the Higgs and its energy scale, and not seeing anything besides the Higgs, and potentially implying some strange tuning of parameters in the universe. The mass of the Higgs that came out and the non-discovery of new particles at the lower energy LHC suggests that maybe there is some tuning, but maybe not so much. We don't know. It's very biased by what theory you happen to be working on at the time. It could be a combination of things. If I had to guess, my guess is that there is a new symmetry structure there, but it's a bit farther away. It's going to be much harder to see. And therefore, there is some strange tuning of parameters. So it certainly could be aspects of both. They don't mutually rule each other out, but what we were looking for at the LHC was, is there a clear explanation for the existence of the Higgs and why it's showing up where it is?
Got one in the back here.
What are they doing to the LHC while it's shut down?
What are they doing to the LHC? The accident, the result of the accident was that the cooling system, which was liquid helium, when the LHC heated up, it boiled off so fast that it ripped a 7-ton magnet out of the concrete and threw it across the tunnel. And that was a disappointment. And so when they fixed it, they ran the magnets at half energy, because at that point they knew